We are supposed to know this problem by heart. Now only a few people dare to raise their voices against the reality, although there are still some people who do. Some maybe for selfish interests or for comfort, some maybe just to follow an idea, but every day there are less people who raise their voice in the face of something that is already too obvious. The problem continues to grow, and even so here we are, having improved, yes, but not enough. Always behind expectations, always falling short on promises, far from what was supposed to be the minimum necessary, with evidence that change has happened, and yet we stay the same.
You will have been told about this problem many times. You'll have studied it in school, heard it on YouTube, TV, it's even a topic of video games. There are social movements, scientific proof, and meetings in high places. Even its environmental and social effects on our planet are already evident. So what's the problem? If we all know the problem exists and it's destroying the world we know, why haven't we stopped this madness?
Surely there are many answers, but there's one that is key. We don't seem to care enough. Or at least those who live in a comfortable position are not willing to give up the lifestyle that we're used to, based on splurging and waste. You've probably heard phrases like, if we don't change our habits, the world won't be able to handle it. Well, we're already past this phrase. Everything that could happen is happening now. Wealthy countries, and especially multinational enterprises and corporations, are prioritising a dynamic of growth that is unsustainable. And with this attitude, those living in poverty in the global south are being dragged along with them. We're destroying their habitats and their social welfare structures. We are adding to their destruction. Yes, you and I are also responsible, along with millions of others who act in the same way. It is a reality we must face. If we do not change, companies will stay the same, because they continue to benefit. If we need energy or we keep buying new products, companies will produce them. But if we don't need as much, they will have to stop.
We are moving very fast. We have grown a lot, and so has our need for energy. This type of infinite consumerism and growth, along with the increase in world population, requires a lot of energy, and generating it has its consequences. We all love to have these things, but knowing what it takes, is it worth looking the other way? Because the truth is, we're at a point where we have nowhere to look to avoid seeing the problem. It's all around us, it's everywhere, and now we're going to show it to you with a couple of examples.
And the fact is that all this makes us send a lot of waste into the atmosphere in the form of greenhouse gases. GHGs are the biggest culprits of anthropogenic climate change, but of course there are many more. Deforestation is a clear example. It is estimated that deforestation-related activities are responsible for 20% of global CO2 emissions. And have you ever wondered why we cut down so many forests? The way we live has a lot to do with it. Meat consumption, intensive soy or palm oil cultivation, dam construction, mining concessions. All this is necessary to maintain our pace of life. We need a lot of animals, arable land, huge extensions of land that are filled with water, digging deep and wide to find the most precious minerals that we need for the development of technology. It's all about understanding how the dynamics of consumerism and lifestyle in wealthy countries are the root cause of this problem. And it doesn't matter how much effort we put into finding new ways of generating energy. The key is not to need so much, because if we add the reality of population growth to these problems, the system collapses.
Everything we do has consequences that affect us. A good example are the droughts and floods that we've suffered in recent years that are hitting agriculture very hard. This is already happening here and now, but above all, they are suffering the most in the global south. People are suffering the consequences of selfish, wealthy countries. Climate change has a direct impact on people's nutritional freedom, reducing their harvests, producing less food, and increasing prices. These are unbearable consequences for countries that are already in a delicate or critical situation, and they increase social inequalities. They're especially vulnerable without real independence, always depending on the acts of wealthy countries. With floods, hurricanes, droughts, in these places the damage is multiplied exponentially. All these consequences of global warming generate a breeding ground for social conditions, poverty, inequality, and social exclusion to be maintained and grow even more, especially in indigenous and rural communities who suffer the most. This is the irony. The people who are the least to blame are the first to suffer its consequences, and in the cruelest way, whilst those who provoke it live in a glass bubble. Our bubble. A bubble that is already bursting. Do you know what climate refugees are? It's a concept that is already beginning to be normalised, and one of the consequences of global warming. It's that people's lands cannot give them the necessary resources to live at home. They must immigrate, and people often set their sights on the wealthy countries, where we live better. No one wants to move away from what they know, from family and friends, but necessity forces them to look for something else. And this is how we realise the need to get out of our bubble. We must understand we can't go on like this. We cannot force these people to move here and then also pretend that it's not our responsibility. It is. Let's be honest. It's our fault.
The good news is, we are already seeing signs of a change of direction. Public reactions are numerous, with interventions from several countries and organizations that promote ways to face the problem of climate change. Because of the nature of the phenomenon, which knows no borders or artificial geographical limits, there is no choice but to understand each other. That companies and policies have a fundamental role to play. But what about me? What about you? We can do a lot, believe it or not. For example, by spending less energy and increasing your energy efficiency by modifying our habits in general. Not keeping your cell phone plugged in all day. Press the power strip button when you are not going to use certain electronic devices. Wearing clothes appropriate to the weather and temperature. Consuming less meat or products with palm oil. Look at a list of the products that damage the planet the most and try to control their consumption. Practice 0 kilometer by shopping in local stores and get used to seasonal products. In general, consume less. You really don't need that much. You don't need a new cell phone every 2 years or the latest clothes. The textile industry is the second most polluting industry in the world, and it is related to a lot of social injustice. In household appliances, if when we buy a new appliance we check that they are energy efficient, we already do a lot to help. But gestures as simple as opening the refrigerator less, using washing machines and dishwashers with sufficient load inside are very important. If we promote the circular economy, focus on 0 kilometer, and pay more but less often, this will make the energy expenditure much lower. With this share mentality, there are no limits, because everything has an effect on climate change. And although our effort may seem like a grain of sand in the immensity, grain by grain it becomes a mountain.
Up until 150 years ago, we practically lived without energy beyond our own efforts. Everything began to change in the middle of the 19th century with the generalization of steam engines. Here, the need for energy multiplied. First forests were cut down, then coal burning. At the beginning of the 20th century, oil came on the scene, and gas and nuclear energy appeared in the last third of the century. These energies are limited, they are running out, and their pollution levels are alarming in general. If we want a sustainable planet, they must be massively phased out.
And it is that any energy should not be enough. The one that governs the world must guarantee access to affordable, safe, sustainable and modern energy for all people. A goal set for 2030 as a deadline in the SDGs. To contextualise this goal and the effort it requires, some interesting facts. In 2018, still 1 billion people were living without electricity. If we continue like this, In 2030, still more than 500 million people will remain the same. In impoverished countries, electricity exists, but at such high prices due to imports from other countries that it is as if they do not have it for millions of people. As of today, 25% of the world's population suffers regular power cuts without knowing when it will be available. So you see, at this rate, we will not meet anything that would be necessary. These are complex challenges. The commitment at the international level must be high, otherwise there will be no way. And that's kind of the problem, that the discrepancies between nations do not allow us to move towards a fairer world.
According to experts, the only way to create a sustainable energy policy is to base it as much as possible on renewable energies and to improve the energy efficiency of our machines and systems. If we talk about renewables, there are hydro, wind, solar, biomass, geothermal and others. And why are they so important? They all have some drawbacks, but until we find a non-polluting renewable energy source that meets all our energy needs, they are our best option right now. Most of them also do not emit GHGs. They generally do not require large amounts of water to operate and can reduce the need for large-scale hydroelectric projects. They reduce the need for extractive industries by reducing the use of fossil fuels. They do not generate waste problems that are difficult to solve, as is the case with nuclear waste. And not only that, they also have economic and social advantages. Reduced electricity, water and gas rates, or allow energy to reach remote places, and that these areas have energy independence and can develop an economy around it.
If we're not all people in the same boat, it will not work. Exclusion brings wars, instability and insecurity. And although we in the West think we are protected, all this is having and will have consequences on us and future generations. Now those who suffer most are in impoverished countries, but these people have the right to seek a dignified life, and they already do. Poverty brings no good to anyone. We must create a better world, leaving no one behind, where we can participate in a common future with equal opportunities for all people, and so walk a sustainable path to leave a planet that future generations can enjoy.
Let's go back to the beginning, because nothing has changed. Or well, yes. I just hope that now you see this image with different eyes. In the middle of nowhere, a small rock full of life that we are destroying little by little. In a time where we think of looking for another planet to live because we are deteriorating ours, with movies, series, novels and video games dedicated to it, it is worthwhile to stop. Stop looking at the sky and look at our feet. My grandfather, who lived through the 20th century, spent many years of his life without electricity, and he was a happy person. It is true that electricity and access to energy has revolutionized the world, and that it brings many advantages and benefits, but our current dependence on it is entirely mental, a matter of habit and consciousness. What is the point of looking for another planet to which we will surely find it hard to adapt? And what guarantees that we will not destroy it as well? Isn't it better to preserve this little rock, take care of it, and make sure it is still there, ready and sustainable